Good afternoon and welcome to our Goizueta Business School monthly MBA web chats. My name is Angela Bostic. I'm the Associate Dean of Marketing here and your moderator during our monthly chats. These chats are put in place for you to ask questions to members of our MBA admissions committee about any of our MBA programs, our full-time MBA, which is a 1- and 2-year MBA, our evening MBA, or our executive MBA, which is in weekend and modular formats. We'll always have a member of the admissions team available to answer your questions here, but also to talk a little bit about what's happening at that point in time. But this is a great forum for you to bring formal and informal questions and be able to get them answered by an actual committee member. I am joined today on the chat by Rebecca Sandage. Rebecca is one of our admissions members in the evening MBA program, but of course knowledgeable about all of our programs. Right. I'm going to let her introduce herself. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get started. Rebecca?
Great. Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Sandage. I'm the Assistant Director of MBA Admissions. I work with our evening MBAs, but I also work very closely with our full-time MBAs as well, spearheading all of our diversity events and diversity recruiting. So excited you all could join us. Wanted to give you a little bit of overview about what we do during the summer. So some of you all may be on summer break, maybe. We're not here in admissions. It's a very busy time for actually all 3 of our programs. So for the evening MBA program as well as for the executive MBA program, we're still admitting students for our class that will be starting in August. So reviewing applications as well as hosting events. Actually, evening had an event this morning. The executive team will have a class visit next week. So we're really excited to continue to fill the classes for those 2 programs. For the full-time program, we are working very closely with our colleagues in marketing to finish up the great collateral and the new brochures that you'll get to see when you meet us on the road, as well as hosting class visits. So it's very busy around here during the summertime, making sure that we're prepared for you whenever you meet us in the pipeline.
Fantastic. So a little bit of housekeeping before we go into our conversation today. You have a button on your screen you should see that lets you submit questions at any point in time in the conversation. So the questions you submit, I'll be fielding to Rebecca, and if we can't get a chance to field them on air, we've got folks off camera who can reply back to you as well. So please make sure you ask any and everything. There is no stupid question except one that you do not ask. And we'll make sure we get them fielded to be able to respond. In addition to your questions fielded there, we will be having copies of the chat itself sent via email to you all about 7 days after the chat is over. That'll include the slides, but also the content of the chat itself for you to kind of recap if there was anything in particular there. This is a very open forum, so please feel free to ask in anything related to where you are in the admissions process or anything related to the school and the programs themselves. And because I am sure many of you are also split screening with the World Cup, we are giving you the responsibility of telling us the score on a regular basis. So since we can't watch anything but our own screens, you'll have to keep us updated. And we appreciate you all joining us in spite of such an important event taking place. All of that said, Rebecca, you brought up something really important, which is kind of the activities over the summer. Right. Many people think that colleges are kind of quiet in the summer. There's not a lot going on. So before we get into some questions as they're coming in, tell me a little bit about the summer schedule for the programs, if you can go through each one of them and sort of what it looks like as a prospect. What should I think would be happening right now that I can get engaged with?
Sure. So we'll start with the full-time program. In terms of getting engaged and getting ready to be engaged with the programs, it's really good time now during the summer for you to start preparing for your GMAT and GRE. This is giving you enough time to do the adequate prep that you need to, maybe thinking about taking it again. That's not a bad thing. You know, you want to give yourself that leeway. And so we'll be fielding those questions. As an admissions committee, we are also fielding individual questions early and often. We will start traveling and getting on the road here actually in July. So for us, that's a great way to meet candidates early. Coming to the fair table is a great way to get individual questions answered in that setting. So from the full-time, great time to start looking over essays as well. Those should be posted or will be posted soon. We're crafting those and getting ready to start reading those applications pretty soon here for those looking for a fall 2015 start date. Ooh, that's a long ways away. For the evening, in IMBA, again, we are really, for prospective students, we're still having programming. If you're interested in one of those particular programs, one of those two formats, go ahead and schedule your interviews, get those in the books, and also start finishing up your essays and applications. And we look forward to reading those. And that's what I'm glad that keeps me busy during the summertime in the heat in Georgia.
There's a lot of heat in Georgia, so there's a lot of
Yes.
reason for us to
Be
keep
inside.
busy and be inside.
And eat ice cream.
Definitely, and eat ice cream as best as possible. As we're going through this, I'm seeing your questions coming in. Thank you. Continue to ask those in. So there are some questions that are coming in related to the application process and work experience. So if you can talk about the range of work experience across all the programs.
Sure.
What are the levels do you accept is there a floor or a ceiling that you accept by program?
So because this is a professional degree, we do definitely like to see some post-undergraduate work experience, and that's going to vary from program. Really for our full-time programs, our 2-year and our 1-year format, as well as our evening program, we do like to see at least 2 years of full-time post-undergraduate work experience. We like for that to be progressive. There's really no floor per se, because we want to look at the content of your work experience as well. How are you making a contribution to your organization, to your department? Are you being viewed as a go-to person? You're going to see the average is right around 5 for our full-time programs, a little closer to 6 for our evening programs. But there is a big range of students and in terms of work experience that would be a good fit for those programs. For executive programs, these tend to be for more senior leaders or people whose next move will be maybe into the executive level or already in the executive level. Typically, the years of work experience is right around 8 for kind of a minimum. But again, we're looking at the quality and content of your work experience. So these are more guidelines. But for our 2 formats of our executive MBA, you might see averages right around the 12 years of work experience. So these are all ranges, but we do like to see some post-undergraduate full-time progressive work experience. I think that's the best way to think about it. And when you're judging it, again, how are you making contributions to your organization? And can you speak to that either in your essays and the interview when you start looking about the quality of your work experience?
Fantastic. And I think that's actually a really good way to think about it in terms of what you're looking to do with the program and how the degree is going to help you, but also your value in the classroom. It is really important that you can bring a good work perspective into the room with you. So the number of years of work, to Rebecca's point, is not necessarily as important as the kind of work and the value and the caliber of the work that's there to be able to judge whether you can be a value and contributor to the classroom. We've got some great questions coming in, so I want to move us to the next questions I've seen related to recruitment and in terms of company recruitment.
Okay.
So this is probably a question across all programs. I noted it wasn't specific, but if you can talk a little bit about companies on campus and what that process looks like, as well as what kind of things does Goizueta do to engage its students kind of by program with companies off of campus?
Right. Great question. So we have great relationships with companies across the country. We're fortunate to be located in Atlanta that has so many Fortune 500 companies headquartered here. And so companies do come on campus in the fall, and it's primarily for our full-time programs, but if you're in our executive program or in our evening program, you'll have access to those companies as well. Not only is there recruitment opportunities, but companies will do presentations on campus concerning just the general culture of their company, what are some the different functional areas that they may be hiring for. And so that's a great way to engage with maybe you're in an evening program or maybe you're in an executive program and maybe you're looking to do a just-in-time job search. Coming to some of these company presentations will give you a good idea of what they're looking for, maybe for just-in-time full-time employment, but also they'll be talking to what kind of internships they're particularly interested in or what they'll be hiring for and what they'll be interviewing for on campus. Outside of just coming to campus, Goizueta's Career Management Center does a really great job of engaging with the companies that you want to be in front of outside of campus. So we do take career tracks to different industry centers. So for instance, there's a career track to New York to look at finance, look at marketing. There's tracks to California if you're interested in the tech space. There's even some international tracks looking at different companies, in Hong Kong and in East Asia. So we as a school also make sure to put you in front of the companies where they are. And that's great too, because oftentimes you get to interact and see that culture firsthand when you go on the treks, and see if this is a good fit for you, kind of a mini test drive. So we're fortunate that we have so many companies that come to campus, and that they engage with all our populations, either in formal recruitment or in just doing company presentations, but also that our career management center and team is really good about getting the students in front of the companies where there are across the globe.
Fantastic. And you guys are submitting awesome questions. So if you hear in the background me typing while Rebecca's talking, just making sure I'm answering your questions here, and we're doing the same off camera. I'm going to move it a little bit to talking about different aspects of the application.
Sure.
So there were two really good questions that came in that I had not kind of heard before. So kudos to you guys for stumping us. The first one is there an aspect of the application that you wish applicants spent more time on, that they were more thoughtful or mindful of? And in that same tone, there's another question related to what is there about Goizueta that you wish more applicants knew?
Oh, okay.
So if you can answer those two separately, that'd be great.
Okay, so for the first piece, what I wish applicants spent more time on. I would say probably the essays. I think that's a great way for us to get to know you. So there is a lot of emphasis across the programs on, of course, test scores, and I think as a whole, most candidates or most students do a great job of spending time on that. But the essays really give us as admissions officers a chance to get to know not only why an MBA out of all the MBAs or all the degrees out there, but also get a good sense of your personality. So we're really thoughtful in terms of crafting our essay questions. And I wish sometimes students would spend more time just giving us a genuine answer. There's no correct answer, but I think you can really get a good sense of a student's personality by reading their essays, especially when talking about their fun fact or what makes them unique or what's their passion. Because in addition to making sure that you're quantitatively sound and academically ready and that you have great personal or professional experience, we're also looking for students who fit our community. And regardless of the program, if it's full-time or evening or executive, you will be spending a lot of time here on campus and interacting with your colleagues in this intimate, close environment. So we want to know, how is Angela under stress, or how is Angela, when she's doing very well, and the essays allow us to see some of that personality. So taking time and really letting your personality shine through the essays is somewhere I wish candidates would spend a little bit more time on. And the second question was,
what do you wish people knew about the Goizueta Business School that they either don't know enough about or don't know at all, that you think would be an important, not just necessarily a selling point, but something that you think is critically important to know as someone is applying? They should be mindful that the Goizueta Business School is what?
Well, I would say, this is maybe sound a little cheeky and corny, but I actually would say that the Goizueta Business School is actually gorgeous. And so when you think about that, maybe from a full-time perspective, you are going to be here nonstop for 2 years or 1 year. This is the campus where you're going to be engaging spending a lot of your time on. So weather aside, because everyone knows Atlanta has great weather, I think that it's an environment that really is conducive for learning, and that the classroom spaces are very mindful of that, but also that the campus space is someplace where you want to be on campus. And for our evening and executive students, I think that's also very important, that everything actually takes place on this gorgeous campus. So they're not satellite campuses. You're here, you're on the Goizueta Emory campus. And so it's a place that when you walk around it, you feel this great connection to. And I also think it gets the juices flowing. Maybe when the case competition or the case is a little bit too intense, you can walk outside, go to the Highland Bakery, which is a great local bakery that we are so fortunate to have on campus, and grab a cup of coffee and then look outside and really take in the scenery. And I think that's something that we talk about, the intimate environment, but the environment also includes the physical space. So that's why we encourage you to come to campus and visit us. And I wish, we have great shots, but I think being in the environment does something different for you.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to describe it. That's where it's really a good point for you to come to campus and visit. And that's actually a fantastic segue. I don't want to leave the idea of some questions on the application, though.
Okay.
Because there are some really great ones coming in. There's one about working in the nonprofit and international sector. And I know there's been a lot of interest in sort of people who've been asking questions on here about what kind of industries and backgrounds do individuals come from, and then what kind of background do people, or kind of industries do people go into, and you can tackle that from each program perspective. I think it'd be helpful to know sort of the diversity across our programs, because it is a very impressive selling point.
Right. So, great thing about our curriculum and the education that you get here is that students can come from any area and still be successful in transitioning to a different career space and or function or industry and or accelerating. So in terms of of course, when you think of the kind of traditional business roles, marketing, finance, consulting, you'll see that a lot. We have a lot of people who have engineering or IT backgrounds. Of course, I'm thinking of our full-time. I know we have a number of students who come from like the nonprofit Teach for America. We do extremely well there. And so there's different roles, educators in general. For our one-year program, we do see a lot of entrepreneurs and people who come from family businesses. In our evening program and our executive program, that range is there as well. So in terms of work experience or where you come from, I think because our curriculum and education is so robust that you were able to come from a myriad of backgrounds. I think the key point is being able to translate your successes into something that's quantifiable and to be able to talk about that. So it's not like just dollars and cents, but being able to talk about in a sophisticated manner how in your space, if it's been in education, if it's been in government, if it's been in finance or consulting, how you were able to make an impact on that organization in your time there. It can be in a department, it can be in a larger space, and that can happen across multiple industries and functions. On the flip side of that, where we do very well, across all programs, we do very well in placing students or having students accelerate in marketing, finance, and consulting. And that comes in a myriad of ways. So finance, it could be going into banking, it could be going into corporate finance. Those are great roles that you see a number of our students going into. Marketing, brand management is very well. We do very well there. But also in analytics, we have a center that focuses on the marketing analytics center that talks about this idea of big data and not just being able to kind of analyze it, but also being able to communicate that effectively to those consumers who might not have the quantitative backgrounds that you all will get when you come here. So we do very well in there. And in consulting, we do extremely well if it's management consulting, strategy consulting, kind of IT. So that's full-time. And the same placement or kind of acceleration happens in evening as well. The evening program is a good kind of middle program between the full-time and executive. There's actually a lot of overlap there. And for our executives, I feel that a lot of times those students have maybe a little bit more defined career path. And so their career successes tend to be very similar to what they're doing. Not that switches don't happen, but they have a lot of again, they have a bit more years of work experience, so they tend to have, I think, more defined goals because they're just a little bit further out than someone who may be in a full-time or evening space.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things to understand about the programs, people ask a lot of questions about on the incoming side, what are people looking to do, and on the outbound side, what are they going to do? One portion that's important to note is that depending upon the program, the desire to switch or to change industries is more effective in certain programs. So for our full-time program, the difference, if you can talk a little bit between a 1 year and 2 year, and sort of, are you looking to make a pivot or make a dramatic switch? Right. Same thing with evening and understanding like what are the reasonable, kind of levels of change.
Right. So I think that you'll see the most dramatic changes that occur in our 2-year full-time program. And that's because there is a definite break. And then you use the internship to kind of fill out that space of what this new career change will be. And then your second year focus on getting a full-time job there. So there are some industries that lend themselves better to this format, such as if you're interested in going to brand management, some investment banking roles, some of your consultant roles, they like to hire from their internship pools. And so that's why some career tracks like that require this internship, and a 2-year may be a better format for you. But let's say you are interested in maybe making a switch into something like corporate finance, maybe the one-year accelerated program is a better fit for you because those fields and those industries can and do hire outside of their internship pool. And so part of that when meeting with an admissions officer, either on the road or one-on-one, is to help you kind of work through those career goals to find a program that's a better fit for you. In the evening program, we do have people who make very dramatic shifts, but it's often, well, the evening format is 32 months or 3 years. And often the switch may come, you might have an intermediate step during your time in the program, and then maybe a bigger jump after your program. And so at the evening program, we help you think about your actually managing your career while you're in the program. And maybe the big switch comes 2 or 3 steps after you start the program. A lot of our students in the evening program will see some immediate ROI, either increased responsibility or promotion in their current career, and they're able to use that as a platform to then make a switch to something maybe that's completely in a different industry or function. So if switches and pivots and changes can definitely happen across the programs, I think it's important to note that it's going to look different, and that you have to think about how if that change is something that you're comfortable with. So some people like the idea of an internship as a great place to fill out the waters and then make a change. Some other people like the idea of managing their career at the same time and maybe taking 2 or 3 steps to make that change. And so we have the Career Management Center and the resources for both our working professionals, which includes our evening and our executive students, as well as the Career Management Center for our full-time, so you can get the individualized coaching that you need to be able to make the best adjustment in terms of making a career switch or change.
Fantastic. I think those are great. And I just got to commend you guys. You're asking phenomenal questions. I'm trying to bucket them into areas. So definitely hold on. We're going to make sure we get to all of them. There have been a lot that have come in related to scholarships.
Okay.
And I thought we might tackle them into some buckets. So the first one being in the application process, what is the school looking for in terms of how they award scholarship, merit-based scholarship by program? And then if you can talk specifically about some of the categories. So for example, our consortium work and how do students get involved through that? Or are there other ways that people can get scholarship consideration outside of their merit-based?
Okay. So first of all, we review all candidates for scholarship for merit scholarships across the programs. It looks a little bit different. So in terms to stand out, when we're reviewing an application, we're looking for, of course, professional experience, academic readiness, and kind of Goizueta fit. Those are the big buckets that we're looking for, and we kind of touched on those earlier. In terms of looking for scholarship or merit-based scholarship, it's really the standouts in the class in those areas. So your scholarship recipients, their GPA and average GMAT tend to be higher in terms of work experience. We have a lot of students that have great and phenomenal work experience, but those who receive merit scholarships, they stand out from the rest of the application pool in terms of their ability to make a direct impact in their organization quickly or continued successes. They may be able to navigate a very tricky maybe merger or something like that, something that says we want them to be able to lend that experience in the classroom that really does stand out among the rest. And then in terms of fit, I think you want to make sure to highlight how you've been engaged in the community since you've graduated, maybe in an employee resource group or in your company. But you also want to talk to kind of maybe key undergraduate roles that you've had, because we're also a small community, so we're looking for people who can get engaged and get involved very, very early and often. This is not a place to come if you want to hide. So we're looking for people who have these just great experience in terms of academic readiness, in terms of professional experience, and ability to contribute to the community. And so those are the big buckets that we're looking for across the programs. Outside of the merit scholarships, a lot of our centers do offer center fellowships. That is a separate application that you can apply for. So if you're interested in a specific area, you can apply to that, apply for a center fellowships. In terms of the consortium, we are a proud member of the consortium for the graduate study of management, and that is a separate application. Well, you have to apply through the consortium, and for that we're looking for to be a part of the consortium, applicants have to demonstrate a commitment to serving African American, Native American, and Hispanic American communities. So again, it's serving those communities. There's a separate kind of membership application that you'll write for the consortium. And then if you're granted membership through the consortium, you're considered for a full merit-based scholarship here at Emory. It's a very elaborate process in terms of how we make those scholarship considerations. It does, there's some rankings that are involved on your end, how you rank different schools, but that's another way that you can receive funding. And it's all based on work that you've done in the community and servicing those populations. So that's a great opportunity. The consortium fellowship is only for our students in the full-time program, but you can be reviewed if you're in a 1-year or the 2-year program. For the executive program, we have a number of partnerships, like with the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, through Women in Technology. We offer scholarships through that. And for the evening program, we do have the merit-based scholarship that we offer.
Fantastic. And can you talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, the consortium process,
Mm-hmm.
and then how an individual who's looking at that would look across the programs of the school?
Okay, so for the consortium, like I said, it's actually a 2-part process to the application. So the consortium does allow you to apply to up to 6 member schools with 1 application. There are 18 member schools that you can choose from. The only one that really matters is Emory, though. But you can choose from those, and you apply through those with a common application. And we'll send you some supplemental essay questions. So it's great because it is a savings in terms of time and preparing applications. The second piece of that is writing your membership essay and getting a membership recommendation. And that speaks again to your ability to work with or service African American, Native American, and Hispanic American communities. And so the consortium, which is a separate entity, will review your membership letter and recommendation. We as the school will review your all your application materials in terms of admissions. You have to receive an admissions decision of yes and receive membership into the consortium to then be eligible to be reviewed for the consortium fellowship. And that's a separate process. It happens in mid-March, and all the people who have applied through the consortium are then looked at individually and based on your rankings of your school. So if you apply to 3 schools, you have to pick the first, second, and third choice, and then we get the opportunity to offer you a fellowship. So we always tell people that if you know that Emory is your number 1 choice and I'm applying through the consortium, then you should rank us number 1, because that gives us the opportunity to offer you that fellowship first. So again, I guess the key takeaway from applying through the consortium is to rank Emory 1.
That's really all you should ever do. You should always rank us 1, and then you don't have any problems.
Yes.
There have been some questions that are coming in specifically about different types of programs. So before we leave, I want to make sure you can talk a little bit about social enterprise here at Goizueta, and also talk about some of the leadership opportunities that are in our program in terms of gala and things that students can study and how that can translate into career skills, not necessarily having to get a job in nonprofit or necessarily work in social enterprise, but how do individuals incorporate that into their career goals?
Right. So social enterprise focuses a lot on corporate social responsibility and also sustainability. And I think the center and Peter do a great job of highlighting that in the social enterprise space, it's definitely about profit, but how you can use that profit to do good or to do better in the community. And so for any person who's pursuing a business degree, I think those are great skills to be able to have, and also a way to talk through when you move into positions that you'll be making decisions about how you can use some of your profit margin to enhance the community around you. And there's a lot of opportunity for students to get engaged and learn kind of hands-on what does that look like. Here at Goizueta, we do sustainable coffee farming. There's a trip to there's some work we're doing in Honduras in terms of ophthalmology. So there's a number of ways that you can get involved to learn kind of what that looks like, and then how that model may translate into the industry or function that you are going into. It doesn't necessarily have to be a space that you want to pursue full-time, but it's more about learning those principles and how they can apply to where you're going. And that's a great, for all the centers, we're looking for involvement across all our programs, so from evening students, executive students, and full-time students. there's opportunities to get involved in all of our centers, including social enterprise. The second piece was about leadership. Leadership is something that we value. It's one of our principles here. And so at Goizueta, across all three programs, again, the full-time, the evening, and executive, we're going to take a three-pronged approach to developing or looking at leadership. So it's the kind of the academic, managing people and teams, how do you lead others, the theoretical perspective of kind of this is what leadership is on an academic level, and then there's the personal level of leadership, and those pieces are the optional pieces. Angela mentioned Gala, the Goizueta Advanced Leadership Academy. For evening, it's also the Advanced Leadership Academy, and those are two programs that will happen the fall semester of your last year here on campus that you apply to be a part of. And that's a deep dive into your personal leadership style. So, well, how do you lead under stress? And what is your leadership brand? And how do you then effectively communicate that? It is a deeper dive into topics you already would have received in your core and the core co-curricular modules, but some people like that opportunity to take a deep dive. There's usually some experiential component of that, be it a ropes course in Fort Benning for our evening students where you have to move these 2-ton things in a party of 6. I don't know how they do that. Or if it's sailing, a sailing trip. I know some of the full-time students have gone on a sailing trip in the past. But there's different ways to look at leadership. And the third piece is really your own personal brand. And I think that's a very holistic approach. And what you'll find here, if it's in leadership or if it's any of the core business functions or anything that you're interested in, that we take a very kind of holistic three-pronged approach to it across all of our programs, so you know that you're getting a full experience.
Fantastic. So I think the holistic portion, and there are a lot of people who are asking questions about leadership and strategy and how could you use that. Leadership, quite frankly, is valuable in every career that you would want to get into. But for the most direct elements, it's a lot of value for individuals who are looking to get into rotational programs or general management programs or into consulting strategy. There's an immense amount of value in being able to persuasively convince individuals above and below you to sort of be on board with your objectives and your thoughts. And that's something our school is very well known for, developing leaders who people actually follow, and kind of their insights are valuable in that regard.
And to that point, not only is it through the leadership development part that you learn that, but also through our management practice, which is something, again, across the programs that you'll get, which is learning how to effectively communicate your decisions. And it's usually based off of incomplete data. So problems don't show up with a "I'm a problem" button. They show up as really messy, complex situations, and being able to, one, read through all that data and then come up to a decision and be able to effectively communicate that to decision leaders and bring a team along with you is something else that you'll get in your experience here that speaks to leadership is not just a one kind of avenue. It's across the entire curriculum.
So there's some questions coming in about one of my favorite topics, which is in experiential learning and sort of the culture at Goizueta and ways to get involved. So this is a big question. I'll try to unpack it a little bit. Can you talk about some of the experiential opportunities that exist across the programs within the school? And then in more particular detail, some of the clubs and activities that take place that are uniquely Goizueta, that individuals can get involved with, that sort of are part of the culture and fabric of who we are.
So I think in terms of experiential, it's important to note that we are a small community. All of our programs are small. So you can get to know the faculty very well and your classmates. And so I think that's key to know when we're unpacking this question. In terms of experiential learning, like we mentioned, there's the leadership development, there's the management practice course, and that's experiential because there's clients that are actually bidding or that we service. These are actual corporations usually brought in with alums or friends of Goizueta that say, we have a real life problem that we are working through. Help us. And so the final teams get to make presentations actually to the client, and they usually take those ideas back and incorporate them. So that's great experience in terms of, again, presenting to actual clients dealing with actual problems. For those in our full-time program that are looking at marketing, we have GMSC, Goizueta Marketing Strategy Consultancy, which again, it's looking at a marketing issue, very large-scale marketing issue, again, working with corporate clients. So that's, again, you're working in teams, you're taking some data, and you're unpacking it over the course of of your time here, there's a number of case competitions that we'll hold through different centers. So the Center for Alternative Investments has done some case competitions. There have been some in real estate. An evening team just did a big presentation where they won a big check from Exxon, a case competition. So those are all there to allow you to, again, interact with clients in the community and your teammates. We also, across all three of our programs, so full-time, evening, and executive, require that students go abroad. So there's an international experience that we require, because it's important that you get a passport or a stamp in your passport, that you see the globe, but you also to understand diverse and global perspectives. And so each program has a myriad of trips that they can choose from. There's also a colloquium for our evening and full-time students, where we do an RFP, and those separate communities decide the trip that we'll be going on that year. So there's standing trips, but there's also a trip that fluctuates every year. So past trips have included South Africa, Colombia, Dubai. So those are all places that we've gone to look at the intersection of business and culture, and how that translates to how we do business here in the United States. So those are some of the experiential pieces that we get, that we encourage all of our students to do, that comes back to being a small community. Because we're so small, we can make sure that you're getting plugged into the right kind of coursework or international experience. To the clubs that we have here, we have tons of functional and industry-specific clubs. So there's a consulting club, there's the marketing club. But I also think it's important that you're bringing your whole self, regardless of the program that you're in, you're bringing your whole self here every day. So we also have kind of clubs that are around particular interests. So there's a wine club, which I think is great. But there's a lot of different clubs that speak to the fact that you can bring your whole self here. Different ways to get involved, too, are through our centers. So Emory Marketing Analytics Center, they have a big conference every year. The past 2 weeks ago, I think, our marketing department, faculty department, hosted the Informs Conference, which students were able to get involved with. So being such a well-respected institution, a world-class institution, means there's a lot that's going on here that requires student manpower or person power to make sure it's up and running. And those are experiences that will then carry you on into the workplace. Or if you're already in the workplace, help you to accelerate in that setting.
Fantastic. So there's been some really good questions coming in about deadlines, and
yes.
in terms of deadlines, not just that, but applications and interview process. So I thought it'd be helpful if Rebecca can talk a little bit about three main things. One
yes.
being rounds.
Yes.
What are they? I actually have some slides here to be able to put on the screen for you guys to note the rounds by program. So as we go through those, we can talk about that. As well as, what does it mean to be on rounds? What does it mean for a person? When do I hear back?
Mm-hmm.
And then the interview part of that. How do I schedule my interview? When do I do my interview? And how does that play into my round decision? So,
okay.
Not that that's a big one, just all those things.
All those things. Well, Angela, keep me on track if I don't address all of them. But with rounds are a great way. It's a two-way communication. I think that's the best way to think of rounds. So the first thing you'll see is a round deadline. So that means if all your application materials have to be received by that date to be considered in that round. So everything needs to be complete, and different programs have different standards on what complete is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But so that's the first piece. So that's like kind of the deadline for that round. If we don't receive all those materials, your application is moved to the second round. So that's a target of when I need to get everything in. The second piece of a round is equally as important is if you get all that information in by this particular date, then you will see the next column is when you will get your decision notification. So that is when you can expect to know your admissions decision. So it takes the guesswork out. If your application is complete by this date, you will hear from us on that date, which, I think when you have a lot of balls or pieces in the air, that's great to know. It's clearly communicated. And then the next piece of that is the deposit deadline, and that's when you have to let us know that you've made your decision. So there's an application deadline of when all materials have to be in, then you have your notification deadline of when you can expect to hear from us, or when you will hear from us, and then the deposit deadline of when you have to let us know if you're coming to Goizueta. And that's across all three programs. That's how rounds work. It's to take the guesswork out. So we always encourage students and applicants to apply in a round that they feel the most confident in. You don't want to be scrambling to get pieces of your application together. You want to submit a complete application as well as a strong application. So if that means, I really need to tweak this essay, I'm going to hold off until round two, definitely do that. Interviews are a part of the rounds, and they work differently for the programs. So for the executive program and for the evening program, you can set up your interview at any time. You can go online to Goizueta Connection and pick the admissions advisor and set up your interview. For both programs, your interview has to be submitted for your application to be considered complete. So your interview has to happen before that particular round deadline. For the full-time program, we have open interviews through mid-October, and by that means that same process that we talked about for evening and full-time, you can request an on-campus only interview for full-time. So if you come to campus before mid-October, you can request an interview. After mid-October, it's by invitation only, and what that means is you would submit all your application components up through, excluding your interview. There would be a preliminary review, and then you would be invited for an interview. But all of that would happen still enough time so that you can receive your decision notification by the date that we stated. So for full-time, open interviews through mid-October. After that point, it's by invitation only. For evening and executive, schedule your interview on your own and make sure that it happens before the deadline.
Fantastic. You tackled that very well. Look at that.
Thank you.
And in terms of the interview deadlines, I'm going to have up on the screen now because we haven't really tackled all these, but application deadlines for the evening program and the executive program and the full-time program. There, as Rebecca has said, there are rounds, and there's still time for our evening and executive programs to apply for this year. So on the screen right now is the executive MBA schedule. The evening schedule and the full-time schedule are also included in this chat, so you'll be able to see those deadlines and those dates. Our website is the best place to go to be able to see that information. For the full-time side, those things are just been created, so we're working on the collateral side for that. But do note that if you're looking for the open interview timetable, that you would want to make sure you're starting that application process early, as it sounds like you are doing right now, so that you can be available and ready to do that as the open schedule is available through October. So I've gotten a couple questions, and I didn't know when to ask it, so I'm going to ask them now.
Okay.
This is related to dual degree.
Sure.
So there are two questions related to it. The first one is kind of the dual degree process. Do you need to be in a particular program? So for example, can evening MBA candidates be dual degree, or is it only full-time? Can executive candidates be dual degree? And if you are interested in being dual degree, what is the application process? Done together, done separately? Does it vary by program?
Okay. So most of our dual degree program students are going to be in our full-time program. For our evening, there may be that possibility. Actually, I know we have a partnership with the MPH. I think that's the main one that we see for our evening program. And for our executive program, I believe because the curriculum is a bit more structured, that there isn't enough room in there to be dual degree. So the majority of our dual degree students will be through our full-time program. And I want to say we have up to 5 different dual degree possibilities. This isn't going to be an exhaustive list, but I know there's a MBA, MPH, MBA, JD, MBA, MD. There's one MBA, DPT, MBA, JD, and MBA in Div. So there's like 6 different options, and I may be leaving off of maybe 1 or 2. So there's definitely a robust dual degree program here. It speaks to the strength of the Emory community overall. Absolutely. So that we're going to tap into it. We're all about leveraging our networks around here. So the application process really will vary depending on the program that you're looking at, but usually it is you're applying to both programs simultaneously, and you have to make sure to communicate with both admissions officers. And so, for instance, if you're doing the MBA, MPH, you might take your GRE because both both schools accept the GRE. If you're looking at the MBA and Div, there is some MCATs that are involved. So we actually have admissions directors that work directly with those programs in Libby Livingston and Katie Lloyd. And those would be the best people to talk to in terms of the nuances of applying. But know that it's open. It's primarily for our full-time program, and we have 6 or 7 different options in terms of dual degree that you can pursue.
And one last question is, if you are interested as a consortium applicant to do a dual degree, is there a separate process for that?
So you will still, you can be a dual degree through the consortium. You would continue with your consortium application as is, but you will need to apply to that separate school according to their process. So it's best to communicate with us so we can be in touch with the other schools, like if it's an MBA JD, so we know where you are in the application pool. I also want to hit this note too, that if you receive some type of merit-based scholarship or funding, be it a name scholarship or be it through the consortium, that only covers your business school application. So if you're looking at merit-based funds to cover the other portion of your degree, you'll need to reach out to that school to see what that application process looks like.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're moving through the questions, and hopefully we're getting a chance to tackle all of the things that were related to that. There's some question about resume, and then after we talk about resume and professional experience, we're going to move into talking a little bit more about some on-campus opportunities. Okay. So related to the resume, how do you judge kind of the value of the work experience and starting your work experience? I know we talked about before not necessarily being the number of years,
right,
but how would an individual translate their resume in a manner that would be most attractive, if you will, to an admissions officer?
First things first, it should be 1 page. Unless you're an executive candidate that maybe has 10 to 12 years of work experience, I may consider 2 pages. So the first thing is tailoring that resume down to 1 page, and that will really help you boil down the essence of each of those jobs. So sometimes you want to give me every project that you worked on, but that's what the interview is for. We can kind of talk through that. You want to make sure that you're highlighting or hitting the main points and how you were able to contribute to that organization or to your department, or how you made a difference. And so that can be quantifiable, and if you're in operations or in transportation, you shave time off of this, or it's cost savings if it's finance, or maybe you're in a nonprofit space or a social space, you increased engagement by this number, these percentages. Those are the types of things that we're going to be looking for in terms of being able to judge or kind of assess, not judge, but assess work experience. We're also going to look at the number of promotions that you've had. So over this time period, have you been in the same position for the last 10 years? Well, then you're going to have to use the optional essay to talk about that. Or, even if it hasn't necessarily been promotions, that you're taking on additional projects and responsibilities. So, you started here, but now you're doing these more complicated things. So that's what we're using the resume for. And the resume is also going to be looked at in concert with your recommendations, as well as, again, we talk about it through your interview. So our application review process is definitely holistic, because there's some gaps that you need to fill in. But for resume and work experience, you want to boil it down to 1 page. And it's also important, again, to include involvement outside of just the work, because the resume then gives us a sense of how you're able to balance and what else you have going on besides being a stellar employee.
Fantastic. And I think that it really is important to think about the way in which you're presenting yourself and your candidacy. So there's one thing I definitely want to make sure, we got a lot of questions on it, so I'm going to try to push them all into one space, and it has to do with engaging with the school and events. So I put on the screen for you all to see just a list of event opportunities across the programs. It's not extensive. Of course, our website is the best place to find our listing of events, but this is a good overview of some of the upcoming activities and ways to get engaged. So Rebecca, if you had to say in a nutshell, what are some of the events that we host and the population that they cater most to? So who should do a web chat, and who should come to an info breakfast, and when is it appropriate to do an open house, and how could you do a fair, and what would that make sense? What would you give in your advice to a prospective student?
So we have a myriad of events for across all programs, and I think we have so many events to match your personality style. So some people like an information breakfast. I know our evening program and our executive program host those. Those are more intimate events. They're small scale. There may be only 10, 15 people there, so we can really engage with you. And some people like that intimacy, being able to have one-on-one. Some people like the magnitude of an open house. Open houses tend to be more comprehensive, robust programming. So there'll be, usually faculty presentation, some interaction with current students and alums, some admissions presentations. So it's kind of visiting or getting the highlights of Goizueta in a day, and they're usually more large scale, and they're on campus. So some people like that. And the fairs we actually have them for our evening and our full-time populations. I mean, and you'll see that for evening we're at all the Atlanta fairs. There's an evening admissions officer there, and so for fairs, maybe you're just it's a great way to kind of maybe an initial point. I think fairs are a great initial point. As our web chats to kind of say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking about. Maybe I have one or two quick questions. Maybe you're considering multiple programs, and the fair gives you that opportunity to get all of that information. And then I would say after you go to a fair, it's great to come to an on-campus event. I would highly recommend it, regardless of the program or format that you're considering, to come to campus, because you'll get a feel of the program and of the space that you'll be occupying, either for a year or up to 3 years if you're in the evening program. And so we have smaller on-campus events. We have larger on-campus events. I highly recommend class visits, and we offer those across all the programs, because you're assigned a student ambassador, so you can get those one-on-one questions answered, but then you can also go and sit on the actual class. So hear from our faculty that are absolutely amazing, see that classroom interaction that we talk about, that as an admissions officer, that's hard to capture, but if you come on campus and come to a class visit, you'll get that. And then there's usually a tour component. So I would say maybe move from a fair if you're kind of in the initial sourcing phase, come to an on-campus event, maybe when you're trying to maybe tease out more of the nuances of the program. And our web chats, they definitely are great places, I think, to check in. We do more general admissions web chats, but as the year progresses, we'll start doing more tailored and more concentrated things. So I know for evening we do one on that designing an ideal schedule, or for the full-time we maybe do one directed more towards our international students and their specific questions. So, web chats are a great place to check in, to kind of see what are we saying at this point in the application cycle we think are the questions you should be asking. So I think that's an event one. We have a lot, so choose something, but make sure you come on campus.
Yeah, I think that's good. Is the perspective that there are two types of events: the ones where you meet us out where you are, and that's a good, to your point, getting to know us and getting us to kind of feel us out and ask some questions like this forum. I consider web chat us meeting you where you are. And then the things that come on campus where you do get a chance to interact with the faculty and the students and the staff and really see what life on campus is like. It's very vibrant. And so being involved in that and being active really puts a lot of the questions you all are asking into great perspective. You get a chance to hear directly from individuals about their thoughts on it. One question before we get ready to log off, and it's related to the GMAT. Okay, and so there have been a couple that have come in, and I'm going to try to ask kind of the most relevant, is sort of, when do you recommend that individuals take that? And I would answer by program if you don't mind. Okay. And also, if people want to redo that or take that again, how important is the GMAT in the consideration of the programs? And then thus what your advice would be for each program on that.
Okay, so I would say for each program, evening, full-time, or executive, that taking the GMAT early in the cycle is great. And the reason I say that is you want to give yourself enough opportunity to take it again if you need to. And I would say this is a rough estimate, but probably 80 to 90% of people take the GMAT twice. So that is fine. And you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough room in your application cycle to take that. So let's say your goal is to apply round one for whatever program you're looking at, then you probably want to count back 3 to 4 months from that time to make sure you give yourself time to prep. Whatever prep looks like, that can be, getting a book from your local bookstore, going through it and taking the free practice test online, or it could be engaging with a full-blown study prep, whichever you prefer. But those, usually 6 to 8 weeks, and then you want to give yourself time to take it and then take it again. So you at least want to count back at least 3 to 4 months from your ideal application deadline, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to prep. In terms of how it factors in to the admissions process, for full-time and evening, and for full-time and evening, we use it to judge or to assess academic readiness. It's one of the components. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's definitely one of the components that we use to assess academic readiness. It's a quantitatively rigorous curriculum, and so our goal here is to admit students who are ready to handle the challenge. And so if you have to focus, we really like to see a very strong quantitative percentile. Our faculty have let us know that's at least 50% or higher. So if you're well over the 50 percentile in your GMAT quantitative section, that's what we're looking for the full-time and for the evening program. For the executive program, you can apply for a GMAT or GRE waiver, because again, that population of those students who are a good fit for that program tend to have more years of work experience. Again, the average is around 12 to 13 years of work experience. So if you've been working as a CPA for 13 years, you can probably say that you're quantitatively able and ready to handle that coursework. But the admissions committee would make that decision beforehand if you qualify for the GMAT waiver. Again, GMAT waivers are only offered for our executive programs. So if you're looking at any format of our full-time, 1 year, 2 year, or our evening, you have to take the GMAT or the GRE. There are no waivers that are offered for that. And again, it's one of the ways we gauge academic readiness. We're also going to zero in on those quantitative courses that you may have taken, and use that to make sure that we're, again, admitting students who are able to handle the challenges that come with the robust curriculum.
Fantastic. So one more question about the GMAT over the GRE. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts or significant ideas on which one would be better?
So both are acceptable for admissions. I think that it's important to think about the test kind of in terms of career goals. So if you're doing a dual degree program, the GRE is accepted. So if you're doing that, you only want to take one test, hopefully one time. But if you're looking at going into a career and with certain consulting firms or iBanking and other career firms, you actually want to take that GMAT because they more than likely were requested, and you want to score very well on that. So I think those would be the only things I would say to consider when picking the test. The GMAT is still by far the most widely taken test for business schools. So you'll see on our website we have our 80% range for our GMAT and our average GMAT score, because that's the test we see more of. But again, we accept both for admissions, so it just depends on career goals, and also if you're doing a dual degree program in terms of maybe preferencing one test over the other.
Fantastic. This has been an amazing chat. Hopefully, you're going to get you some water.
I got to my water.
You need
today.
water. And I would like to say a thank you to Bashiru, who let me know that Germany did score. Not happy Germany scored, but happy for the update. So thank you.
Thank you
for keeping us updated. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. As I mentioned in the beginning of the chat, the slides from this chat and the video in its entirety will be available about 7 days after today. So we will email it to all of you who signed in today and joined us, just so you have it for your notes as you're going through it. If you have any other questions, your best way to get those answered is to email mbaadmissions@emory.edu. That's mbaadmissions with an S at Emory, EMORY.edu, and visit our website, goizueta.emory.edu, for any of your larger questions about our programs, about deadlines, about events. If you just want to know how we're feeling for that day, you can check out and see the most up-to-date information on our website as you look for your application. We host these every month at the end of the month on the 4th Thursday of the month. So if you have more questions, be prepared to join us on the 24th of July, I think it is, for our next chat. We thank you so much for being with us. Go USA for
Woohoo!
our, for our soccer team, and thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.